Today on Creatives Incorporated, we have two-time ACM award winner and current Personality of the Year, the morning show host and program director for Cat Country 98.7 here in Pensacola, Florida, and around the region, Mr. Brent Lane. Thanks
Hello.
for being here.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Brent, everyone knows you in town as a big radio personality. You've been very successful at Cat Country. You were brought in to be Mr. Pensacola, and that's very much what I think you've been successful coming in. I don't think there's anyone in town that either hasn't seen you around, hasn't been to an event that you've been to or one you've hosted, or just, you're great friends with my brother-in-law, Craig, and going out with you two is very difficult because you can't get anywhere on time. Someone's always stopping one of you two to say hello.
Well, man, dude, I've always looked at this job as very much a privilege. This is a get-to job, not a have-to job, and have felt that way. I was about 9 when I figured out I wanted to go into radio, so, I'm literally living the dream every morning at 5 a.m.
So, being that young, when did you actually get your foot in the door? When did you first start?
I used to make recordings off the radio when I was 9. I'd get in trouble because my mom would come in and catch me under the covers listening to it was Hot 104, and I would actually go on to meet the guy who was hosting that show probably 10 years later at junior college, and he had given me a great piece of advice at that time, which was to celebrate the music and find something you're passionate about to support in your community, and I've always tried to live that, but I don't know, man. I was in high school, and the lowest rated radio station in my hometown wanted to fill their public service time, and they were required at that time to do a minimum of 2 hours of public service time every week. They wanted to fill it with a high school talk show. And their original concept was that the 5 high schools in my hometown would rotate. And I was the only one that showed up, or we were the only ones that showed up, because I wasn't the only person from my high school. I had recruited several other folks, and they put out this call for who wants to be on KTRB, and I was like, oh, I'm totally in. Thinking, of course, at the time, being on the radio meant, girls in my high school would totally dig that.
You'd be famous.
Yeah, well, it was an oldies country station, and there were not a whole lot of girls in my high school into Hank Sr., so I got a really good foundation of country music, but not so much on the girls. But I really found a passion for the job. And I liked it. I learned there's a lot of things about radio that set it apart from a different job. I like to tell people you kind of get paid to make friends, and that's true. If you're a communications major, there's no such thing as interpersonal mass communication, right? That does not exist in the teaching world. And yet, I would tell you that when I had the opportunity to teach it, I would tell you I focused on this part because radio is the one thing where that is actually for real. Right? So to have interpersonal communication, you have to have give and take. We have to have feedback. Well, radio, I would tell you, offers that. And it's a very special thing because unlike TV or unlike anything else, when I say something is read on the radio, what you see in your mind is based entirely on your preconceived notion of what read is. So everybody's conceptualization of what I'm talking about, of my storytelling, is different. It's all based on your own interactions, very one-on-one. And so that creates some unique bonds that other things don't. It's never on radio, if we're doing it right, it's never y'all, it's never you guys, it's always one-on-one. It's very me and you talking in the car. If you're driving and I'm talking to you. There might be thousands of yous I'm talking to at that time, but everybody's part of the story's, different. They're hearing it a different way. And so what that does is that creates some really unique bonds. So I learned early on, I was probably 15, and I had a work permit, and I told my parents they had offered me the opportunity to work midnight to 8 a.m. Saturday night into Sunday, and my mom cried because she thought I would never finish school. And but there was this lady named Old Hickory who would call me, and probably because she had to take medication at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, and she was in her 80s. But we would talk about everything from prom to, because it was boring, man, in the middle of the night. It sounds like a great idea. You're like, I am on the radio! And what that really means is, man, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's just nobody else up. So when Hickory would call me, we would talk about all kinds of stuff. And so I developed a friendship with her and sent her my picture from prom, from my girlfriend at the time, and she would send me this old black and white of her and her husband. I mean, she was old. And then one day she stopped, calling. And so some time went by, and I got this letter from what turned out to be her son, who had found my prom picture and figured out that Old Hickory would get up in the middle of the night and Hickory would call. And his mom had died, and so he would just wanted to let me know. And it just caught me at that moment that, like, it hurt. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I never met this lady in person, but I had a relationship with her. And in figuring out early on that that's kind of what this business is, it's not really, it goes beyond being a business. If you do it right, it's not a job, right? If you do this right, it is really, you invest in your community and you invest in, in your time. And in 31 years of being on the radio, I've only worked in 3 cities, which is very rare for our business. So my hometown where I grew up was in Modesto, California, and I was in San Diego for 11 years, went to school and got a master's degree because I didn't want my mom to be right. Not only did I finish school, but I kept going. And then I came here, and we're much of a faith-based family, and we had a God closed the door, opened a window kind of thing, and so that's how we ended up in Pensacola. And it's been this has been a huge blessing. I mean, I love this community. I love what I get to do. I love the history of this community, and I'm very proud of what Pensacola is. And I think that all of those are factors. If you've credited me with a lot of success, and in that you would call me Mr. Pensacola. I don't consider myself like that. I'm just very proud of our community. So I always consider it a privilege to be asked to go host Big Brothers Big Sisters or something for Man of Food Pantries or whatever. That is always, nobody has to do that. Mm-hmm. That is just something that I always feel like is an honor, and I feel like it is incumbent on me to try to make the best of anybody's opportunity, benefit or whatever that is that I'm involved with. So that, that's kind of how I got to this point, starting early on, realizing that, of course, the girls in my high school did not like Hank Sr. So,
but you still got Old Hickory on the phone.
Well, she like I said, I learned a lot. This is not a job about being famous. In fact, actually, I would tell you that if this is a job that you were coming into, if you were listening to this right now or watching this right now and go, man, I want to be in that because I want to be famous. It's a hard job. It's not an I'm going to be famous job. You can be famous and you can be a good radio person. But if you are famous, if being famous is more desirable to you than working on your craft or working on the job part of this or being excellent at doing the stuff that goes along with being a good radio station as a group, it's hard to succeed.
I want to transition from there because I want to go back later in the show and talk about your teaching time in San Diego. Because I think there's a lot of people that don't know that you actually taught at the university level for a while. I have known you, so I know you're very passionate about what you do and the craft. But I think a lot of people, when they think of a radio host, think, oh, I got to be a real smooth talker.
Right.
But like you said, it's a lot of being able to, feel like you're connecting with someone over a distance, one-on-one, even when it's a mass crowd. But there's also, beyond the soft skills and the technical requirements of speech that you have, there's probably a lot of technical know-how and engineering on the sound side, right? Because do you still have dedicated soundboard engineers running everything? I thought it was a lot of these days it was, on mic, you were doing everything.
I'm doing everything, yeah. I mean, in fact, when I fill in on our talk formats, I still run my own board. I don't need somebody else to run my board. I like to be in control. Look, if I'm going to go down because I said something because the mic was accidentally on, I want it to have been my fault, not because somebody else didn't pop me down.
So now is that stuff you all of that technical training, is that stuff you've picked up along the way, largely when you were still a teenager and you kind of got it all at once or over the schooling?
Well, I think that I think I would answer this question this way. So I'm a doer, and I also like to play Tetris with the way I want stuff to happen creatively. So I'm willing to try a bunch of stuff, a whole lot of different ways. I mean, the things I'm looking for, we're building a new studio for Cat Country right now, and so what I'm most excited about, besides having this huge 16-channel board that'll allow me to do everything, is actually the aux ports. Like, I want to be able to plug in a Mackie board so I can pre-mix artists as they come in and play for us. Like, I want to be able to mix that into my board while I can control all the different levels of what they're going to do. And I think some of that's trial and error. I mean, you have to have a basic knowledge of how to work a board, what pot goes here to make what sound happen, But that's not really the requirement. I think that today, when I started, I was still doing production on reel-to-reel. like 8-track tape that I was splicing together. And honestly, I feel a little bit like, because of that experience, I'm a better production guy today because I know how I would have, I know how to do it like that, but I was also an early adopter. I was the first guy at my radio station in San Diego to be editing on digital, like on a computer. In fact, actually, I had one of the production guy, why would you ever want to do that? I'm like, because like this is so much easier. Like, you know, this is really the future. I promise, dude, you're going to want to do this. But I mean, that, you know, that those are things that I think that if you acquire some hard skills, and today when you're in a class, you know, hopefully you're getting the skills of how to layer tracks and how to do all of that stuff. Well, all that's great. In the real time application of that, I mix a lot of stuff on the Cat Pack Morning Show in real time. I'll have 3 or 4 tracks running in different formats on that board at the same time, and that's kind of the magic of radio. How do you get that harp sound to pop up? Well, that's on this button over here, which is on this pot over here. Yeah. So
that's great. Most people I know who do anything where they're in front of a microphone, they tend to develop a strong opinion about what mic they like on their voice.
Well, I'm a Shure SMB guy. I like the way Shure sound. We have used, for all of the time I've been at Cat Country, RE20s. I find them to be a little bit colder. I prefer the Shure sound, but what ends up happening is we have this massive Optimod, you know, processor that takes all the stuff we do on the radio station and it basically puts a finalizer on it. Mm-hmm. So it all sounds great when it comes out the speaker. Yep. I don't necessarily like how it sounds in my head, in my earphones before the mix, but I do like how it sounds afterwards. So
you spent some time on the radio in high school, got your foundations, went off for, you said, that 2-year degree in San Diego.
Well, actually, I went off. I started in Modesto. I went to Modesto Junior College for 2 years, and because I was already on the radio, and I knew I wanted to do that as a career, I got into my communications classes. And they just bumped me forward because, I mean, I was already working, which was more experience than the people in Class 2 had. So I pretty much went right from there to the college radio station on that campus, which was great, and got some leadership experience there. I was the program director and the general manager of that station. And then I left for San Diego State for technically my junior and senior year. And I had plans to go to work for KSON as soon as I got there. At least that's what I had hoped to do, because I had an in. The guy I was working for in Modesto at Cat Country had been a station he was at. We had a similar trajectory, and so, but that didn't work out because nobody leaves KSON. It's a very hard station to get a job at. So while I couldn't get a job there, I went to the college station in San Diego, KCR, which is a legendary college radio station, and I got a job doing freeform radio, which was tough for me because I wasn't into grunge rock at the time. But it was really great in terms of the experience. I spent a semester as a host, and then I was the PD the spring semester that year. And it was pretty neat, man. We had, this is when Jewel was hanging out in coffee shops. That coffee shop was across the street.
Oh, that's cool.
She'd come and hang out at KCR. And that was pretty neat. So I was, and I would send an air check every week to that radio station, like every week. Hey, every 10 days was my plan, actually. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't quite every week, but every 10 days, which would throw off the day a little bit. So if I sent it on a Monday, the next air check would show up on a Thursday the following week. And eventually I got hired. It took me 8 months. But the night guy, the midnight to 5 a.m. guy on KSON, got busted for getting photos for girls that were not of age, and so that's how I ended. He got fired and probably went to jail, I think, and I got his position. So, but that was the end. It took a long time, and I had some great mentors there. So I did that. I also immediately I stayed with KCR in San Diego. I became the general manager the following year and wrote the handbook for it. I have a little bit of a claim to fame in that while I was there, we became the first college station to broadcast live around the world on the internet, which is cool. So that was neat. We used to have to disconnect the stream because we only had 10 streams because there was some dude in Germany that would just listen for 13 hours at a time. So in order to boot them off, you had to disconnect and reboot it and then get everybody back on. But that was really neat. It was like I said, it was a great experience. I loved my time in San Diego. I actually went on to stay and get a master's degree after that, but I had, my time had come and gone on the college radio station, but they are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. It is killing me. I can't go back. So I would have loved to have seen, at least my slice of life in there.
Congratulations. Now, which station in San Diego was it that you were at? You have this great story about one of the wildfires, and you were on the radio and looked out the window, and here it was coming down the hill. And
well, you're combining two different stories of mine. So I was on the air at KSON, and we did a lot of work. The wildfire that you're referring to came across Kearny Mesa, but San Diego's a place where you have to have multiple jobs. So at the time I was at KSON, I was teaching at San Diego State, and I was running a creative services company as well. And our office for that creative services company was in Kearny Mesa, which if you watch the movie Top Gun, like that runway where they're running, where he's driving down, that's the Kearny Mesa. Like that Miramar is that airfield. And so what you're talking about is, in October we get these things in California that they call Santa Ana winds. So the wind reverses. It's like the ocean becomes a vacuum and it sucks the wind out of the desert on the other side of these hills, and it'll race through there like 50, 60 miles an hour. Like it's a hot wind. So I can't remember the name of the wildfire at the time, but it had burned 200,000 acres. But it came over the crest of Kearny Mesa down towards Miramar Airfield right at our office. And we had to pull all of our stuff out of our office, our sound equipment. We had to, because it was all going to be smoke. Like we spent a long time kind of getting all that stuff out. In addition to doing that, of course, the radio station in town, I mean, dude, we had hundreds of families affected. We ended up doing it was like a huge blanket drive just for people to, kind of take shelter. And, there were a couple of communities that were devastated by that fire.
Wow. Yeah, you have so many interesting stories from that time period. I mean, you have a ton that you've done, though. How many years have you been?
This is 31.
31 years in radio. Mm-hmm. How many of that's been in Pensacola now?
This will be 14.
That's right. I knew you were getting close to 15. I didn't want to say 15 in case it was over or under 14 years. Wow.
So, and again, this is one of those jobs where, you throw yourself into whatever opportunity God's given you, and there you go, kind of go from there.
Now, you taught a little bit at the university while you were there. That was during your master's program, correct?
Yeah, that's true. So I was getting a master's degree, and websites were becoming a thing, and one of the professors we all had, grad school is kind of like the 19 of you kind of go through at a time, or whatever that looks like. If you've been to grad school, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And so we were this, really tight-knit group. And so Dr. Dozier was like, hey, I want to build a website for the School of Communication at San Diego State. We all signed up. It was going to be an elective. And literally, like everybody who was in my grad class group, we all went and did it. And there was this book of HTML codings about this thick. And that just does not work for me. Like I don't learn well, especially when we're not doing anything. So I went to Office Depot outside of my apartment and bought something called PageMaker, and I built a template and brought it to the next class and was like, hey, let's check this out. Maybe we could build off of this for some practical application. And that was the last time Dr. Dozier showed up at that class. I pretty much taught that class from that point on and stayed about a week ahead of everybody else just to know what we were doing. And we did get a website done, and then I was asked to teach as an adjunct professor for the next 7 years until California ran out of money. And I taught, what I did was I took web design, marketing, and combined them into projects based around my knowledge of radio. So I used that as kind of a format, and it was a great class. And one thing about teaching I think that is pretty great, and I know you'll know this, it always keeps you sharp.
Yeah.
I always felt like I had to stay ahead of my students. Mm-hmm. And inadvertently, when I was running that creative services company I was telling you about, I hired the best of each class. Mm-hmm. So eventually we grew to about 22 people deep.
That's great. Wow.
The first four in the building were all some of my top students from some of those early years, and we built that company together. And so,
yeah, that's one of the biggest secrets of education is every time you see a teacher who looks like they know what they're talking about, chances are they're 7 days ahead.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where if you do it right, it's not because I think it's not because I was incapable, or it wasn't like I was a working professor though, and so for me, I always liked the part where it kept me sharp because I got to engage every week. One of those professorial secrets is to ask your students questions, which gets you thinking about those questions, and maybe somebody's going to come up with something genius you didn't even think of. And I've always enjoyed that process. And one of my favorite things to do is go talk to UWF students in radio about radio. And every year there's somebody in that class every year who is like going to end up at our doorstep, which I always think is pretty great. And over the years, one of the best examples, a guy named Davis Allen, who was a student at UWF, is now the program coordinator for the talk formats for my company. And he's excellent. Excellent young man.
Fantastic. All right, so next let's talk about, we've walked you from 9 years old through high school, through, junior college and your time at San Diego State. Now that we're leaving San Diego, you had to come to Pensacola. You've described that as a door shutting and a window opening.
Yeah.
And at that point, you and Angie had gotten together, and you have a family.
Yep.
What was that like?
I met Angela at the Bitter End in San Diego. It was a dance club, and I wasn't really a club guy, but my buddy had come to visit me, and so we met on the dance floor. I got her number on a O'Doul's napkin and led with, "I'm a teacher, not a radio guy," which is how I knew I liked her, because normally I was like, "Hey, I'm on the radio." So that worked out. That was pretty good. But yeah, we had a young family. We had by the time we were ready to make this move here, we had 3 kids, and it was for me to come to Pensacola. God closed the door and opened a window pretty directly. I told you about the creative services company. We had one client that we served pretty exclusively at that point, like 22 people. Probably 17 of those people were involved in just this client. And it ended up being a multi-level marketing kind of business. It was really good. And I still, to this day, I would tell you that if you're going into a business like that you want to go into a business where people would buy the product without the business opportunity. If you've got that, then you're onto something. And but this particular client got June 13th of 2003, was notified that the FTC had seized the business. Ooh. And I was holding about $250,000 of advertising that I could not back out of that weekend. I think that was a Thursday. Ads started the next day, and we were booking long-form radio for people. So that was part of what that business was. We would do a lot of the radio infomercials, and then we would buy a lot of their advertising. And we'd kind of gotten lazy. Like an industry standard for radio is 90 days out as an agency. There is zero reason I would ever take that business again today. This was a huge learning opportunity. So it's cash in advance. I'm going to provide you this service, period. End of story. But that's not how it was. So about $250,000 of advertising that I was not going to get paid for. In fact, all of these people that I was buying for just had their business seized. So it was probably somewhere around $400,000 that I was owed at the time. So we went from making revenue, which was pretty good for our little business at the time, which was about $1 million or so. We went from being a positive, and as a business, as an entrepreneur, like I wasn't bringing home money. Right. Like should have probably, I was in my 20s. So at the time in my head, I had time to make adjustments. But at that point in the game, I was, everything went back in or went to somebody's salary or whatever, but I wasn't personally bringing cash home. And that was a problem because I was still on the hook for all of the debt. And we flipped into some serious debt. And so it came down, I was originally trying to do a different job at KSON. And they ended up going with somebody else. And so what do you do, It's like, well, we're going to have to make some sort of move. And I was doing pretty good in radio at the time. And so I had mentioned to the program director at the time, and the consultant at that time for that radio station handed me the card to Dave and Mary Hoxing here in town. And they flew me out. My wife and I had I tell the story in public, so I could tell you here, we had a divorce level fight. Like, she did not wrap her head around moving to Florida. She was a San Diego girl and did not know what that beheld us. So it was like, why would you take this flight? We're not going to do that. And so I came out and they took me out to Crabs, and I took a picture on my flip phone at the time, and it was of the pier, and there was nobody on the beach, and sent her this photo, and you like it, don't you? And I actually ended up turning down the job. Like, I had my mentor, the guy from Cat Country 103 in Modesto, was now a PD in Salt Lake City. And he and I had been talking too. So I liked this job a lot. And actually, it was the hardest job I'd ever had to turn down. Like, it felt right. And, but I felt, like I had this other opportunity, and I knew Ed real well. And Ed called me after I'd turned this job down and said, hey, our company is not we're on a hiring freeze. I can no longer bring you here. Not going to happen. And, what do you say to that? I'd already turned this job down. I didn't have another place to go. Wasn't feeling real great. And I'll never forget, man, Dave Hoxine called me about 2 weeks later and was like, hey, I hear it didn't work out quite like you thought it would for Salt Lake. Would you reconsider Pensacola? And I said, yes, I would. My wife has to like it, though. And so they flew Angela and I back out to Pensacola and put us up at the Hilton on the beach. And she was like, this is pretty amazing. Like, this is really amazing. So, the deal was she had to hate it for us not to come. And so I signed, and at the time faxed back my deal agreement that I was coming. And we were prepared that we would probably have our kids finish out school in California. This happened in November, so we were prepared. It took about 6 months to sell a house, and so I was prepared not to see them for 6 months. And about an hour after we faxed back the agreement, somebody knocked on the door of our house and offered to buy our home as was for whatever price we'd pay for it. And so instead of 6 months, they arrived with a U-Haul like 8 days after I got here. So we were like, woo-wee, this is a God thing. So that was pretty great. Yeah. I mean, what do you say to that? I mean, yes, Lord, I will follow. And I did. So we did. And that was pretty, that was awesome. So we got here. I got here, started December 1st of 2005. My first event was a Christmas parade, to which I had a woman who had never seen me before in her life, but I was wearing my first Cat Country shirt and long pants, and ran up and said, I'll never forget what you did for us during Ivan. And I said, thank you. And she said, no, I thank you. And again, had no idea who I was. And that kind of set the tone for community service. And that's how it really began for me was, the most welcoming, most philanthropic community I've ever been in my lifetime. And my wife to this day would tell you that if I had to go somewhere else, I would have to commute back home because she's not going anywhere. And our roots are pretty solid here. And I've been very blessed. My oldest daughter works for the radio station, runs our digital marketing, and is a sales associate who will make sure that your business is great, along with the rest of our fabulous team. And along the way, my kids have been the Cat, or my son's Mr. Stickers, or whatever, as the time that he's grown up. So I've always looked at it as an amazing opportunity that we are fortunate that we followed. Had we not done that, because actually the station I was at tried to recruit me away from coming. They magically came up with another gig that I could do, and I said I was already committed. Had we not done that, the whole 2008 recession, like my wife's full-time job went away, like we would have totally been BK. Incidentally, I told you that long story about how we ended up with a ton of debt and I ended up here. What I didn't tell you is I never BK'd the company. We paid off every dollar that we owed to, at one point I owned one radio station in Los Angeles, California, $86,000. And it took a lot to pay off, but we did it. And we took Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University class, which, as you know, and my wife and I have been the coordinator for that now for 10 years. And we took it in 2008, and then we have worked that's kind of our ministry, to give back, is because it took us 3.5 years to be debt-free from the time we took that. But I never want to be in that position again, and I certainly believe that there's a lot of other people whose marriages are affected by it and all the things that go along with it. And so that's kind of that's our ministry together as a couple.
Yep. And that's something my wife and I both took that,
life-changing,
through you and Angie as well.
It's
a good time.
We don't do the teaching; we just do the fun part of it. So we help. Dave does all the teaching, but well, I always say if you're not dumping debt and gaining weight, we're doing something wrong. So because we do a lot of potluck food. Yeah. So
jumping back to life as an on-air radio host. Now you've stepped into the realm of program director, which puts, I'm sure, a ton more organizing and responsibilities on your platter. But it all goes back to your time in front of the mic, being a personality.
Sure.
You get up, and you've said this other place, but I know you've told me you typically get up around 4 a.m.
Yep.
And it seems like, okay, well, then you'd get off 8 or 9 hours later, and you just have an adjusted schedule.
Yeah, no.
But you don't. You go to bed about, as late as I do.
Yeah. Probably not what my doctor would want to hear, but yeah.
Yeah. So how have you always been that kind of go-go personality, or has it?
Well, I think that you're looking at two different things. First of all, there's multiple aspects of being creative happen in the radio station, right? So first of all, you have to figure out what the overall station promotion is, and I happen to like. I've gotten to where we've gotten, I think, good as a team at delivering on events, even first-time events. Like we are pretty good. We have a thing called "Is the Cake Out of the Box," which is a great story. I'd probably never have told you.
No.
So we had Josh Turner come for Miracle on Palafox. This is about 3 or 4 years ago, and Josh, it was on his birthday. So what do you do, right? I mean, we got an artist who's in town for an event that we are doing to raise money for. Miracle on Palafox is about Christmas wishes, which really goes to help kids who are in underprivileged households maybe get some toys for Christmas. So Josh comes, and at the time, we were going to honor him with his own birthday cake on the stage. So we go to do that, and the picture that would go to the trades or whatever is the birthday cake with Josh leaning over the birthday cake and all of our talent looking at Josh going, "Happy birthday!" Oh. Except that nobody took the cake out of the box, which meant there was a big cardboard box on a table that they brought out and put the logo backwards. So there's no shot of Josh Turner in looking at his birthday cake. There's only a shot of the cardboard box being opened and Josh Turner looking like he's acknowledged that there is a cake. It's not the shot we wanted. So in that, we have a saying at the station, "Is the cake out of the box," which really stands for, what have we done to make this special? And is everybody on the same page with making that special? So that applies to the morning show. What are we doing to make the cake out of the box every day? And then that applies to the radio station. What are we doing to make our promotion, our event, whatever it is, a cake out of the box moment? And so for me, there's a lot of planning that goes around that. So my day is broken up into some different areas. I get up at 4 o'clock. The show starts at 5. I'm usually 1 cup of coffee in by 5:30, which is important. Or maybe not. Maybe I need to cut back on the coffee. I'm not sure. Depending on what time of year it is, sometimes it's a 3-cup morning, sometimes not. Typically the show is over at 10 o'clock. We use the last hour of the show to try to pre-prep for the date and the next day, because we go into a lot of music. By the time your workday starts, we play a lot more music than we do morning show stuff. What typically happens right now is at 10 o'clock, I will actually usually try to go home and rock a nap. Like I usually need to go home, and my superpower is that I can sleep. I can be asleep in 2 minutes, and I can sleep for as little as 10 minutes and be okay. Like I can get a, quick nap, or I can also rack out for 2 hours. Better if it's 10 minutes. If I'm out for 2 hours, like I am a zombie to get going again. So typically I will go home, do that. I will usually be at the office or whatever. I typically have duties around noon for whatever, depends on what the day is. And then I'm usually there till 3 or 4 o'clock. And then I go to whatever our evening thing is. Tuesdays it's bands on the beach. Wednesday nights I'm doing FPU. Friday nights we're doing a race, whatever that ends up looking like. And that's typically my pattern. And then most of the time I'm in bed at 10 o'clock, which is an hour and a half after when I should be in bed to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we're working on that. Talking to you, doctor. Appreciate you. So that's, I had young kids and never wanted to miss out on what they were doing, and typically bedtime was 10, so that just kind of became the thing. Although now that I pretty much only have a 16-year-old at home, who's working and is dead to the world by 8 o'clock, makes it a lot easier for Angeline to be like, okay, it's 9 o'clock. Let's hit the rack. So that's good. But that's about what my day is. Outside of the morning show, I'm usually using the last 2 hours of the day to prep for the next day. So there's usually about an hour of prep in the morning for, hey, what are we doing tomorrow? Here's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Here's how we're going to get it tomorrow. During the day, there's, hey, we got to do stuff so that tomorrow happens, depending on what it is, which includes interviews with other people. Hey, I want you to tell me what your favorite color is if tomorrow's topic is what's your favorite color day. So I got to get you to say that or a couple of people to say that, so I seed the phone calls. And then at night, I usually go back through, here's all the stuff that I missed. And that actually comes out of the habit of, we used to have terrible internet at the tower, so bad we couldn't get access to what was going on. So I never prepped at the radio station. I would always prep at night. And that's just a habit that I've always kept. So, and a lot of times in that time, I'm figuring out how do I plan the station's, promotions or whatever else might be part of that creative process.
So it sounds like while you have a routine, your routine isn't like a lot of people, even they might think of radio as a time where you get up, you go to the station, you do your job, you go home. Yours isn't like that. So by my count,
we call it the radio life.
Yeah, in a given day, you get up, you leave home. Mm-hmm. You're at the tower, which is a different place than the station.
Correct.
That's up in Molino.
Technically not Molino. It's actually, it would be closer to what they would call Robertsdale. You can't put a 1,000-foot tower in downtown Pensacola, so the only place that was available is in the middle of International Paper. Several logged forests, down about a 2.5-mile dirt road. At the base of this tower is typically where our studio currently operates from. We can operate from both locations, but until we do something else at this other location, we do a lot of work in the woods.
Yeah, so you're up there, and then you head down to the main studio in town.
Yep.
Then it sounds like you're back at home prepping, working at home.
Yep.
And then there's all of the events, remotes, anything. There's almost something surely going on once a day.
Yep.
So that's 4 places of work every single day.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, how do you sustain that? You plan a vacation every 6 months. You've always got something to look forward to.
Have you ever had, I move around from location to location a lot now for my work. Have you ever had just, you're on a deadline, everything is timed out perfect. It is a thing of beauty, and then traffic hits or, something you can't control, and it just throws everything off into a spiral.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, I tend to over agree. Like, I always feel like I can cut it too close, and I shouldn't do that. Like,
that's how I got him, ladies and gentlemen. That's why he's here.
That's it. I mean, that's it. That's it. Well, it's not so much that. It's that I've, like right now we're getting to do this because I'm off this week. Mm-hmm. This works out. There's a promotions meeting I'm not going to today. There's some other stuff that happens at the station that I don't have to be a part of today. But I tend to be like, if I got to be somewhere, I have an event that starts at 11, I can do something else till 10:30. That's really not enough time for me. Time management wise, I should be done by 10:15 just to build in the pad. And that's something that I'm personally working to be better at. Thus managing my ability to deliver.
And this has nothing to do with creativity, but it has to do with Brent's time management. So, and this is a story I've told other people. And Brent, you said if you have a magic power, it is naps. Mm-hmm. You have 2 magic powers. So would you agree we have been to several movies together now?
100%, yes.
A lot of movies.
Part of the movie crew, definitely.
Yep. So before joining the movie crew and going with Brent, I was the guy that, for my own anxiety, I had to have the right seat in the right time. So I'd be at every movie 30 minutes early in my seat. And then people would kind of build around me. And I've gotten over that now. Thanks to the movie crew. It's not my life anymore. But Brent, no matter what, no matter where he is, no matter what's going on, I wonder if you're just out in the hallway, because we're all waiting for Brent. We've got a seat saved for him. We're not talking, the previews are playing. The previews are ending. The last note fade out of the last preview goes down. Movie credit comes up. Brent sits down in his chair. He has never missed a second of a movie, but he has never been there a moment earlier than he had to. Right. How do you time that?
Luck. Yeah, I don't know, man. I was there early for one, like 300 back in the day. That was a good flick. I don't know. It's just one of the, and I love movies, by the way. The creative process of movies are something for me. Like, I enjoy watching a movie to see how somebody else did it creatively. Like, I always think the storytelling of that, which goes along with what I do for a living. But I enjoy that so much, and I enjoy the camaraderie of movies. You never want to let your movie buddies down.
Yeah. No, like I said, you've never missed a second of it.
I got the popcorn. Slide into the chair.
At what point did you find out, or did you realize with Angie that you weren't the only talented speaker in front of a microphone in your marriage?
The first time I called her, I got her answering machine, and I thought, she's got a great voice. And sure enough, she did. So over the years we've been together, we do a phone greetings business outside of this, and I would say she does probably 80% of the work. I do all of the editing, but she does 80% of the voice work. But yeah, she's good. She's she's the shadow voice for Cat Country. So when you hear the artist and titles on the radio station, that's her. We did that the first time. We did the first 500 artist and titles, our anniversary weekend of 2008. You know what you should not do on your anniversary weekend? Something where either of you is giving directions to the other. Say Garth for me. It's not Girth, it's Garth. So, yeah, I slept on the couch. It was not my favorite.
Angie is a lovely woman and is great, and has been a co-host at times on the show.
Yeah, I've had 3 major co-hosts. We've had Dana, who was my first co-host. She and I did this show for about 5 years. In between Candy, Angela was on for about a year, and we had a great thing going. And honestly, that might have been perfect. My son was still in elementary school and really wanted Mom to, still be able to take him to school. And so that was a family decision. We decided, but she's, she'll fill in from time to time and come in and sit in with me. And, she's the head of our team Catitude for the Making Strides Walk, and is very involved with the station, obviously with me as well. And then obviously I've had Candy and I'll be together. I think this is 7 or maybe 8 years. Yeah.
What's amazing is I grew up with Candy. When I was in high school, I was into rock music, so I listened to a lot of TK.
Right.
TK 101, and Candy was one of the big hosts there. And
she says she did rock radio for most of her life, but actually she's a Barry Manilow fan, like in a big way. She loves yacht rock. And currently, obviously, is in she's very good at what she does with country music. So,
yeah, she is a very big personality. She is a lot of fun to be around.
Yes, yeah, she'll tell you some stories that'll make you cringe.
So here at the end, I always ask someone for a piece of advice.
Okay.
So someone who's wanting to either get into radio, or we could narrow it down to like finding your voice, and the ability to have confidence in front of a microphone.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of things, for a lot of people at some point in their life, they might end up on camera or on mic.
Sure.
And it's not a wholly natural place to be for most people.
Well, actually, I would tell you that my thinking right now is, first of all, in radio, they don't teach it like it's an opportunity anymore, right? We are one of the declining industries of America, which actually means that it's probably a better opportunity right now to be somebody in high school or college and thinking about going into it, because this is something we're always trying to get more people in. So it's an opportunity if you look at it the right way. And secondly, because of social media, I would say that we are training a generation of people to host their own shows already, right? I mean, we have so many people who are already, I have my TikTok channel, or I'm on Insta or whatever, and I'm doing stories, and we already have a huge group of people who already natively know how to host stuff. But what I would tell you, if you're asking for my tip is, it's twofold. One, you have to be a learner. You cannot know everything. You should not know everything. You cannot approach a business knowing everything. There are great people who have been doing this for a long time, who have an enormous amount of wisdom, who can help you. And I would say this is a caveat to that. I would say social media is good and bad, because there are a lot of times some folks want to be famous on social media and they already think they know everything. Mm-hmm. That is hard to work with. is very difficult. You can be like, well, I'm already doing my own show. And if you bow up like that, this is a bad gig. Like, it doesn't work. Like, we have a very set way of working that is proven to be successful. So the station is nominated for CMA Station of the Year. We have accolades in a trophy case that indicate that there's a group of people who have really applied personally and professionally a set of things that make it work. Okay? As a group. We're locally owned. It's not a corporate radio station thing. I mean, there's a group of people who are very talented at this. So if you show up and think you know everything, it's very hard for A, anyone to respect you, and B, it is very difficult for somebody to want to teach you. And I would tell you that if you're a learner, if you're somebody who wants to be taught, can be taught, is capable of receiving coaching, criticism is going to help you be better long term. There is nothing you can. It's just like being coached in sports. There is nothing that nobody's trying to ruin you or take away your personality in this job, in this business. We're trying to make you the best you can be. You got to make sure you're playing for the right team when you do that. But the other part of that tip is, like, you have to be all in. It's not a 9-to-5 job, as you pointed out, and rightfully so. Anybody who approaches the media business in general, whether it is TV or radio or whatever, if you go, oh man, you know what, I only want to work 9 to 5, like, you're going to get beat immediately. Mm-hmm. It's still a competition, right? Food gets put on my table because of advertising, and advertisers have to see a value in that. And in an effort for people to see a value in what we bring to the party, like, we're a business of making friends. And if I had never been a learner, I would not have the experience of some folks that were very talented along the way. Like, I would not have the benefit of knowing what they knew about how to do stuff. I bring my own personality to every party, and then I coach others to do what I want them to do in terms of how to do that. But I need their personality to be part of that plan. So you can be really good at being a personality, but if you're no good at the craft portion of it, you'll never get better. You'll never do what we want you to do. So my tip is always be a learner. Be a learner, be a learner, be a learner, and find somebody who's a good mentor. And I think that my experience is, if you reach out for somebody to be a mentor to, they'll give it back to you, right? I mean, I wouldn't tell you to go and be overbearing to somebody. I wouldn't tell you to go, I used to ask for, we call them air check sessions. So I'd bring my tape in, and I'd have the person who was, I was doing midnight to 5. I probably was not the most important person in their day, but every Tuesday at 3:15, Mike Shepard would sit down with me, and we'd listen to my tape, which was about 5 minutes long in terms of the breaks. Music radio, I have 20 and 30-second talkovers in between songs and that sort of thing. So we'd talk about how to get better. Why would this tease work better here? But that coaching does not stop today. I am being coached today. I have somebody who listens to me every day, and we meet all the time about, what if we did it this way? And that person becomes my collaborator in how I make my craft better. And if you aren't somebody who is okay with that, it is very hard to succeed. If you find a good mentor, somebody with some success who you respect, and you can get them to help you, magnificent. Keep going. It doesn't matter. And the other part of that tip is, in being a learner, is you really have to get your foot in the door by showing up. And if that means, hey, I'm going to show up and be a brand ambassador, so I'm going to be the cat, or I'm going to hand out stickers or whatever, get in the door doing that. Hey, I really would like to do this. Like, I cannot tell you how many times somebody's opportunity opened up because they were there. Not because it was where they started, but because they were there. Hey man, I need somebody to board op Argo Athletic football. Golly, Bobo Johnson got into a car accident. Who's going to do it? I'll do it. And that's how it starts. So I started off, being the guy who was available. And then I was a learner. And then I became the personality I am today.
It's fantastic. That is wise words, man.
Well,
thanks for telling us.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. And if you're watching and you go, hey, I really want to do that, go do that. If you're not in this town, go find a local radio station that'll go do that. Again, you have an opportunity to do it just by being available. Doesn't always work out in terms of, you can throw out a million resumes, but the right opportunity will come along. You have to be tenacious, man. You got to keep going. You can't be, I one and done it.
No.
It didn't work out one time.
Nope.
Yeah, man, it just doesn't work. You got to go in and keep going and keep going and keep going. I will go back to telling you it took me 8 months to get a job at KSON when I thought I was going into a position. So I went to a college radio station. I did the best work I could do, taped it, and sent it every 10 days. That's tenacity. I believed that 10 days is right. Honest to goodness, I still believe it. I had a kid who was a high schooler who every Thursday afternoon at 3:05, I could count on getting an email. And for 6 months, he hit me up till I finally hired him. Eventually,
that means a lot, though.
Somebody is going to pay attention. So you have to be tenacious. You have to be a learner, and you got to work on the craft.
Thanks for being here today, Brent.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.